been trying to register, and she hasn't been, so I'm about to send her my registration link.
You're broken down and tired of living life on the merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we gon' walk it out. Move mountains, we gon' walk it out and move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, I like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. The silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet. Move mountains. And I'll rise like the day. I'll rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I do it 1,000 times again. We have each other, and for that we have each other. And we will rise, we will rise, we'll rise. Oh, we'll rise. I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again. And we'll rise up, I like the waves. We'll rise up, in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to repeat some of the words to that song because it reminds me so much of where we are, where we have been, and where we are going. there's something that she said. She used the word you. And I hope today that when you speak to everybody, or even as you are in breakout rooms, that you take a moment and point to you, and say to another person, because of you, we've been able to rise up. Because of you, we've been able to fight again. Because of you, we get up not one time, not two times, but 1,000 times. And in 1,000 times after 1,000 times after 1,000 times, because we have been, we have a fervor and we have a zeal to see our lives improved one day at a time. Remember that this work is not just hard work, it's heart work and it's legacy work. And when she talks about the things and the power that we have, I hope you're inspired by that. Because in this song, she said, we can move mountains. We can rise up unafraid. We can rise up like the waves. We can rise up, again, we can rise up. And I hope this reminds you that you can do this. You can rise up and you're not alone. You are in this. We are locked arm in arm, heart in heart, mind in mind, desire and desire, understanding that my liberation is tied to your liberation. And that's why I can point to you and be excited about you joining us, for our next Lunch and Learn series today, which we're going to look at, your health in your environment, air pollution and asthma and more. I'm Bishop Marcia Dinkins, the founder and executive director of the Black Appalachian Coalition, and I am always honored to be in your presence and to have you in our presence. Please know, trust, and believe that we don't take it for granted. It is exciting to see all of your faces across the Cascades because it's letting us know that we are not alone. And I just need to say that over and over again, we are not alone because there's so much apathy and despair in this work. Sometimes we get disheartened, we get broken down, we get wounded, and we want to give up. But, today, again, reminds me that we are rising up. Joining us today for this Lunch and Learn is the wonderful Dr. Patricia DeMarco, who has been leading us in this work, our partner Orvi, who has been with us since we have been doing the Lunch and Learns. And I'm also excited to introduce you to two activists who have been heavily involved in their community, and you'll hear from them today with regards to their lived experience. The first speaker that we'll have in our lived experience after Patty speaks will be Melanie Mead. She's a resident of Clariton, PA, and she's a longtime activist who's been fighting for air quality, pollution reduction, ending food inequality, health and healing, and so much more. Melanie has been standing, in her community and fighting extremely hard. Our next speaker who will share her lived experience is Gwen Jones. Gwen Jones, she lives in Texas. She is the founder of Climate Conservation, Brazoria County. With a focus on climate and environmental justice, she has been fighting for a very long time. And you know what? I guess, Gwen, you can say to yourself today, and Melanie, we're rising up. I'm also honored to introduce Patrick Kyle, who is from GASP, and I want everybody to just give a heart or a heart emoji or a celebration emoji, because I understand that GASP will be celebrating 55 years in the community. They have been working diligently and relentlessly to reduce or to improve air quality. What he said was, we are all things air quality and climate change. And so I'm so glad that you are all things air quality and climate change, Patrick. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining us, for sticking with us, for staying with us. And I'm going to be quiet because I'm just ready to get things started. So Patty, it's your turn to rise up and take us to where we need to go in this particular session today. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marcia. You are an inspiration and so eloquent in pulling people together and understanding that we are in this fight because you need to have a healthy environment in order to have healthy people. Those two are completely connected and you cannot have one without the other. So Ben, if you would put up my shared screen, you don't need to be looking at me. I have some things to share with you that will help understand this. And we are going to be looking at this now, the second of our series on air pollution. We'll be looking at asthma and a lot more. Next slide, please. So air pollution is not something that is rare. It is ubiquitous across America, and there are 85 million people who suffer from at least one toxic material in their air environment. In 2022, the latest data for which we have statistics, there were 66 million tons of pollution emitted into the atmosphere in the United States. And this was emitted under permitted emissions for the most part, because we don't limit what is risky and hazardous. We limit the amount of the risky material that can be released. So this is a problem with our air quality regulation. They sort of allow a little bit by everybody, but when they all release these materials, you have 85 million people affected by at least one toxic material. Next slide, please. And the petrochemicals are one of the major sources of this air pollution, both in the extraction, whether that be mining or some kind of refining or transportation on trains and diesel trucks and barges. And then at the point of use, you also have the emissions from the burning of these fuels. And in the chemical manufacturing for pharmaceuticals, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, and plastic production, use, disposal, and ultimately waste are some of the major sources of air pollution that we find in our environment. Even things like petrochemical-based paints on the road, as they wear away, become dust that blow up into our air. Next slide. So the three main ways you can get these materials into our body are by inhaling them, which is what we're going to be talking about today. You can ingest them also from water and also food that has had pollutants attached to it, or contamination of the food chain directly, or having pollutants that become water soluble and enter your water system. Some of them are also toxic by contact. So there are especially things where people are exposed in occupations where they become contaminated, or if you work in the fields which produce these chemicals, you can get extra exposure to things other than what is regulated. We're going to be talking about water pollution and water contamination next time. But this time we're going to focus on air pollution and those things that are inhaled. Next slide. So air pollution comes not only from the combustion of fossil fuels, but it comes from fires and volcanoes and lightning, and also from the fumes that come from cars, trucks, railroad cars, shipping, buses, motorcycles, and also from agriculture, from pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides, and from the belching of ruminants who make methane. But these things are all released into the air independently, but they get mixed up in the sky, up in the clouds. They combine with each other sometimes, and they get transported long distances from where they were formed. So sometimes the mixtures become more toxic than any individual item alone. They mix with the air clouds, and you end up with things like acid rain, you end up with smog, you end up with meteorological conditions that concentrate these contaminants in places like river valleys, as we have in the Mon Valley, and other places where you get temperature inversions. And that means that pollution someplace affects people everywhere, because it moves around. It doesn't stay where it's put. The air is the air that we all share. And that means we have to be conscious of how we control this and how we prevent the pollution from becoming a toxic mixture that we have to breathe. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we're very concerned about is from the fracking. Air emissions from fracking go on in the daytime, in the nighttime, and between the year 2000 and the year 2015, there were a huge increase in the number of fracking wells, from 23,000 to about 300,000 wells in operation in this country. And those emissions that you can see, and they're on farmland, but sometimes they're right in neighborhoods where people live within 500 feet of homes. They contain benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, xylene, hexane, formaldehyde, All of these are classified as volatile organic compounds. And when you inhale these, sometimes even in very low concentrations, they'll cause dizziness and headaches, tremors, anxiety, confusion, nerve damage, muscle fatigue, and at high levels, they are even capable of causing death. And some of them, such as benzene, are known to cause cancer. And we don't have a good explanation for how these are transferred. If you complain, a lot of times the company will say, you can't prove that my chemicals made you sick. And the burden is on the customer. They're also protected in the law from having to reveal the chemicals that they're using. So if you're a worker in particular and you're exposed to something in the frac fields that you then develop a rash or a neurological condition, they don't even allow you to know what it is that you were exposed to. So when you go to the doctor is operating on symptoms only. They don't understand what the causes are because you don't have any way to know. The Shell plant, for example, which is taking fracked gas and turning it into plastic in Beaver, Pennsylvania, it has exceeded its emission limits in its permits every day since it began operating. Every day. They were finally fined $10 million, and 6.2 million of that is supposed to go to communities for environmental projects. But this is the first time they've actually succeeded in pining. They're saying they're still in the shakeout phase that's been going on for 4 years. They can continue arguing that they're refining their process and they're in the shakeout phase, so therefore their permit limits don't apply. This is the kind of thing that allows these companies to operate right next to communities in ways that really affect our health. Next slide, please. And we have legacy industries like Clairton Coke Works, which Melanie will tell you about. You can see the plumes coming out of the stacks from the Coke Works, and you see their houses right on the hillside across from this. The Allegheny County Health Department has finally fined U.S. Steel for 362 violations of its Clean Air Act operating permit. And we know that this is releasing harmful chemicals, fine particles, including hydrogen sulfide, which you can smell. It smells like a rotten egg. And many of these chemicals have been linked to cancer and asthma and other health problems. Just in February of this year, they were ordered to submit a plan within 30 days to attain compliance by doing some remediation in the plant for those violations. I haven't seen any plan published yet. And there have been 9.19 million fines over just the last 2 years, and none of us have seen any action taken by U.S. Steel at this time. So this is the kind of thing that has persisted from legacy operations have been going on for decades. Next slide. We also have mobile sources, barges, trucks, trains. They, especially if they're burning diesel, emit particulate matter and also smoke that and have nitrogen oxides as well as the volatile organic compounds that I showed you before. These are things that go into the air and they're right close to the ground where you are, so they tend to be more likely infused into people where they live, especially along highways. If you live along a highway or an interstate or along a waterway where the barges run on a regular basis, you're more likely to be exposed to these. The International Association for Research on Cancer has classified diesel exhaust as a known carcinogen to humans. So this is another place where we need to be careful that we have these areas separated from where people are and that we begin to crack down on diesel emissions. Next, please. So the direct health harms that come from these respiratory contaminants that especially that you're exposed to over a long period of time, you can receive asthma, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, coronary artery diseases, heart attacks, and strokes. And ozone and particulate pollution in particular can cause chest pain, coughing, throat irritation, congestion, and reduced lung function. And this is not a trivial impact. There are millions of people, millions, who suffer respiratory symptoms that need medication, and asthma attacks. Millions of people who have their lung function decreased, who suffer from inflammation of the lungs and cardiac effects. And there are tens of thousands of people who lose work or school because of needing to go to the doctor. And then there are still thousands that end up in emergency rooms or the hospital admissions or having heart attacks and have death. This is not a trivial undertaking. When you have millions of people in the population having health effects from something as pervasive as a petrochemical emissions, we need to really pay attention to displacing these sources of pollution on a fundamental basis. Next slide, please. The indirect health harms, especially for long-term exposure, are also significant, and sometimes they're more difficult to identify and more insidious. Your immune system can be disrupted. You can have airway and respiratory damage so that you end up with poor lung function. You have a depletion of defenses of your body from respiratory lining fluid being damaged. You have cardiovascular damage where your heart becomes inflamed. You have pulmonary functions that are compromised, and you can have also epigenetic alterations in your DNA that allows you to repair damage to your DNA. Those become defects that can't be repaired during replication, and they can lead to mutations and sometimes cancer and strokes. So this is a study that was done in the New England Journal of Medicine, and it had thousands and thousands of people that they studied in order to get these, general conclusions. So this is not a trivial impact from air pollution. They say, oh, well, air pollution doesn't really hurt you because it's always there. It shouldn't always be there, and it does hurt you. Next slide, please. So I think at this point, rather than give you more numbers and data, I would like to have you hear from people who have actually lived in these kinds of conditions and have been fighting to make it better for many, many years. And I would like to give Melanie the floor and then Gwen Jones. So Melanie, the floor is yours.
Greetings. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. As you've mentioned, the legacy pollution has gone on here for over a century, and there's hope in healing, and that's what we've offered here with this opportunity to talk about it. There's a different future for Clairton. It's possible. We don't need to be financed by fossil fuels and false solutions and promises. And we can move from harm to healing by sharing our stories. And this gives us an opportunity to amplify our voices. Nearly 40% of residents in Clairton are Black, and it's a largely concentrated area. 22.5% of Clairtonians live in below the federal poverty line, according to the 2019 U.S. Census. And Black people experience 56% more pollution than their consumption generates. So it's really difficult to engage a community that isn't being educated correctly, and they're not being given the proper information that would empower them to unite. What we have here, what we provide here, gives everyone a clear understanding of what's taking place, what's going on, who is to blame, and why they are to blame. And a quote that often comes to mind for me is by Zora Neale Hurston, that says, if you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. And that's what it feels like living in Clairton. We hear all kinds of loud sounds. We see things that aren't steam, but people will tell us it's steam. This colorful, blues and grays that shouldn't be in the sky, especially if it was steam. And that issue really hits home because our children in Little League football practice directly across the street from the football field. We're building a new multi-million-dollar stadium for our high school students that our Little League children won't get to play on. Our mayor has received over $200,000 in funding for a community center that has not yet opened. So we have a community that's very neglectful to our youth who experience 5 times the national average in asthma in our school, which means where 1 in 12 children are diagnosed with asthma, 3 in 12 children are diagnosed with asthma in Clairton, which is only 6,000 residents. So it's unfortunate that we have to ask the people who should be protecting our public health and standing up for it, for them to really do their jobs and put that money to better use in the community. The local government has access to $5 billion in air pollution prevention funding, but they won't use it because they want to deny the fact that it's necessary and it is vital to the well-being of the community. And this opportunity allows us to amplify what can be done and how they are denying use of millions of dollars to help community when they can be using that money to give us the resources that we need and give us the correct information. So I'm really excited to work with you all and thankful to have this opportunity to share my experience.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Your story and your long battle are just so appreciated and so important. And it's critical that we lift up these important stories and keep this in the mind of those who need to be acting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gwen, if you would like to share some of your perspective from Freeport, Texas, the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you. I'm honored to be here. And really, it's a blessing because the people at Freeport, just like Melanie, they are not aware of what's happening in the community. The propaganda of what was used by industry is to let people think that they are safe. They do they have safety meetings every day, drills and all this kind of stuff, and then they have the advertisement. But now we are having funerals every week. And by us having funerals every week, people are waking up and realizing that it has to be climate change. There has to be the chemicals we've been working with. When I was born, I didn't have cancer. I couldn't breathe. And all my life I have had different illnesses and even cancer cells. But it has, because industry first starts in the Black communities. We had the Port of Freeport there. We had the chemical plant. The land we built on belongs to the sulfur plant. When Dow came in, they were just across the river. The water was polluted, the air was polluted, the soil was polluted. And after, like Melanie said, 100 years of living in that kind of area and breathing it, now we're seeing deaths, we're seeing babies born with cancer. We're seeing it across, not just cancer, even diseases that people have never even heard of. And I really had to, it was a hard time trying, I felt like getting their attention to understand, because we've been programmed so long to feel like the plants are safe. And I had to bring them back into the days when we live off the land, the days when we was able to grow our own food. And then look at it now, we don't see cows anymore. We don't see nature that we had before. We had banana trees, they start dying. Everything around us start dying. And then we start thinking about the illness. One of my friends had a son. When he was born, he got real sick as a baby. He was about 9 months. He lived to 15, but that child never was able to walk, to eat, to talk, or do anything. And I thought about my son when I had him. He was about 9 months and one of my best friend's son was 6 months. They were both in the hospital at the same time. And they couldn't tell us what was wrong with them. My friend, whose baby was 6 months, died. My son was able to survive, but they never did give a reason. And we know today, like I tell people, I am a statistic. It is in my blood. It is in the people's blood. You could smell smell those chemicals. If you smell them, everything that's in the air is in the water, and it's in the soil, and it's in the food we eat. And I feel like we're coming to a point crisis, whereas we have to speak out and continue to speak out until it finally sinks into their head. One of the most hurting things is death is hard in a way. But when you have children, I see it in my grandson. When you see children that are born, they have this illness, that hurts a parent hard. No matter where you live at, no matter where you work at, no matter how much money you make, it doesn't take away that pain. And that is the reason why I am doing what I am doing. Because it is pertinent to me. And so anyway, I thank you for I'm humbly blessed to be able to talk about it and to try to help people to understand who do not understand. And sometimes it takes someone from the outside for someone from the outside to come just to let them know that this is not a Freeport thing. This is a global crisis, and it's serious. And we've seen, like in Angleton, we had a tornado. It was bad. We had 18-wheelers turning over. We had power lines down. We had trees falling on the house. And it started Friday. And maybe yesterday, everybody got their power back on. But it was a disaster. And everything was shut down. We don't have tornadoes in March. We didn't had a tornado in February. We don't have that. We have them during hurricane season. If we get a tornado, the weather is changing, and people cannot deny it anymore. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Gwen. Thank you so much for that absolutely heartfelt story. It's the kind of tragedy that no one should have to live through, and yet it becomes so common across our country. This story is not rare, unfortunately. And thank you for your courage in speaking this very painful truth to us so that we can understand how so much that we take for granted is resting on these kinds of harms. Thank you. Thank you so much. Now, I'm going to have Patrick Campbell talk a little bit about successful citizen action that has gone forward for many, many years with ups and downs, but with some measure of success. So Patrick, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Patty. And before I begin, I just want to simply say I am beyond grateful that I get to spend some time with you all today and hearing the stories of Gwen and Melanie, who I know quite well. I didn't expect to even say this, but maybe you can see it from my shoulder. There's a picture. It's some of my friends in their travels. They were at a monastery and where these monks work and make papyrus and do iconography. And so that's an image of Saint John of Patmos, who's the supposed author of the book of Revelation in the Bible. And you know, if you know that book in the Bible, it's particularly gloomy and doomy in many ways, but it's where we get the word apocalypse from, and that conjures images of destruction, of death. But really the word that it's based on in Greek is apocalypsos, which means unveiling. It means like you're pulling back a curtain to something greater that we can maybe only imagine, that we have yet to fully experience, the fullness and life and beauty that's beyond what we experience in our world now. And I think when when people like Gwen and people like Melanie and others who are here share their experiences and stories, and that's we're doing that revelation work, right? We're pulling back the curtain of what might be a greater reality that we want to envision for one another and for our world. So I'm grateful. Thank you. So I'm in my role here, I'm the executive director of GASP, the Group Against Smog and Pollution. GASP was established in 1969 by residents, by people sitting in living rooms and gathered around kitchen tables, because they knew air pollution was making people sick, and there needed to be greater advocacy within the regions to enact regulations that helped protect people. And so a lot of their work in the early days of GASP was pulling together professors from local universities and students and lawyers to bring legal action against regulators and polluting companies. And so they've had great success in doing that over the years, and we still do to this day. So we paired together things like education. We believe everything begins with education, and then we tie in legal and watchdog work along with advocacy. And you can see here, this is Dirty Gertie, the poor polluted birdie. That's our officially unofficial mascot. And so Dirty Gertie has been with us since nearly the beginning, as a way to teach kids about air pollution and how it impacts human health as well as animal health. So we can go to the next slide here. So some of the ways that we end up advocating for how we advocate for better air quality regulations and protections are, we start with education. So the staff spends a lot of time working on taking really, really, really complex things like air quality science and making it understandable that you don't need a college degree to understand what's going on with air quality and how you can participate in the public process. So we have our plain language guide to local air quality on our blog, on our website. We also had been trying to do a much better job at ensuring that as many people are getting air quality information as possible. And so we've had this plain language guide translated to Spanish, as well as a lot of our emergency alert air quality alerts that we put out on social media translated to Spanish. Again, so as many people as possible can understand and know what to do when air quality is bad. We go to the next slide. We've also spent a lot of time as part of our advocacy efforts are working with municipal leaders. And so a couple years ago, we put together a digital primer and a printed version as well about air quality regulations, air quality resources, as well as funding opportunities for municipalities here in Allegheny County and across Pennsylvania. We hosted workshops with municipal leaders and put this into municipal leaders' hands across the state, so they know how they can get their communities prepared to capture a lot of that federal money that's swirling out there right now, as well as some low-hanging fruit, some things they could do without any kind of federal funding to improve air quality for their residents in their particular county or municipality. So that's still on our website. You should check it out and keep that in mind. Thanks, Ben. We're going on to the next slide. One thing we do with our legal and watchdog work is GASP has 2 attorneys on staff, and a lot of their time is spent digging into air quality permits, in particular Title V permits, and those are permits for large major sources of air pollution. So part of this is we put together an air permits clearinghouse on our website. And so we mapped out the location, that's what those little colored pins are on the map you're seeing. Each one of those pins is a Title V, a major polluting source in southwestern Pennsylvania. The colors mean we color coded them by county. We've also linked the actual Title V permit, as well as any kind of supporting materials associated with it, right on our website. And we keep that up to date, at least every 6 months, every year. And so to pause for a minute, what a major source of air pollution means, and this is across the country, is any, it's when a source, a pollution source, emits an air pollutant of 100 tons per year. So they're permitted to pollute 100 tons per year of any kind of the major air pollutants. And then there's another thing called hazardous air pollutants, and that's where a source is permitted to pollute 10 tons per year of a single hazardous air pollutant, or 25 tons per year of any combination of hazardous air pollutant. And that's just that really cut and dry legalistic language that shows up, that shows up from the EPA website. But that's how they're defining a major source of air pollution. So if we go into the next slide, I can usually keep this in here, but I don't need to harp on it because Melanie shared her experiences. This is a picture of Clarendon Coke Works. You're just catching a side of it, but I showed this picture to people when I'm doing presentations, particularly for folks who don't live in the Monongahela River Valley here in Pennsylvania, to show them how close homes are to Clarendon Coke Works, Clarendon Coke Works is the largest coke producing facility in North America. This is just an astoundingly huge place, and homes are right near it. And you've heard about Melanie's stories about that. So we can move to the next slide. And so when we're talking like major pollutants, we're talking criteria pollutants, and the EPA in particular, as well as all regulatory bodies, are concerned about six criteria pollutants because of their health effects on humans, as well as their prevalence due to the kind of burning of fossil fuels that we all see and experience maybe every day. So you can see how things like ground level ozone and particulate matter and carbon monoxide and lead and sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide all impact the human body. It causes things like asthma, and it can cause particulate matter. Enough exposure, can cause cardiovascular issues, high blood pressure and heart disease and things like that. And so you can see how these things we hear a lot in Pittsburgh when I'm out and about, like especially some folks who have been in Pittsburgh for a long time say, well, I remember the days when Pittsburgh was known as the smoggy city, or hell with the lid off, because it looked like you were looking down kind of into the pit of hell and could see the salt or smell the sulfur and see the haze and the smog. And yeah, things are better since then, sure, but and that's due to tireless efforts of groups like GASP and others who have forced polluters to clean up their acts over the years. But simply because you don't see something, simply because you don't always smell something, doesn't mean air pollution isn't present and isn't negatively impacting your body. So if we go into the next slide, this is why, in particular, particulate matter is so damaging to the human body. You can see the cylinder there is a model of a human hair. So when we say things like particulate matter 2.5 is a measure in microns, and it's infinitesimally small. And there's no defense your body has to prevent exposure and keep particulate matter out because it's so small. And even in researchers who have done blood sampling, particulate matter will show up in blood samples. That's how deep embedded within our bodies that the particulate matter can get. And it's simply due to combustion. It's due to burning of fossil fuels. And yes, burning of wildfires, and regular old smoke. All of that is due. All of that emits particulate matter 2.5, and that shows up in the human body. The next slide is, I wanted to call attention to Dr. Deborah Gentile's study. She's done a couple studies, but this top one in particular, the asthma prevalence and control among school children. And you got to love how researchers name their stuff. You know exactly what they're talking about when they put this on, when they title this. But Dr. Gentile did really important work. Yeah, she regarding asthma prevalence. And so in Clarendon, she surveyed 1,202 children for asthma. And of those students she screened, 22.5% in Clareton in the area had asthma. 26.8% of the children screened were Black and had asthma. And that's comparing 11% of children having asthma for Allegheny County and 8% of children nationally having asthma. That's those rates are astounding. The difference between county and national to Clarendon and other Mon Valley communities, and that's simply due to the presence of major sources of air pollution. Some of her critics of this study really pan this study because she wasn't able to find a control group. And the reason for that is, that's through no fault of her own. That's the reason for that is she could not find a school away from a major source of pollution in the county that resembled the racial makeup of the schools in Clarendon. The schools away from Clarendon and other Mon Valley communities were too white and too wealthy to be an effective control group within this study. This is exactly what an environmental injustice looks like. And we can talk science all day long. This is where it shows up. And that results in children's lives being impacted, their health being negatively impacted, lifelong learning, their ability to learn and function in school is reduced, and that impacts their entire future. So in the next slide, so in Pittsburgh in particular, we are subject to what's called a temperature inversion. So this all becomes more pronounced. We have so many major sources of pollution, as you saw on the map. We have such environmental racism issues in communities like Clarendon and others. This is all exacerbated by something we can't control, temperature inversions. So normally you have warm air closest to where you and I are right now. There's a cooler layer of air and a colder layer of air above that. An air inversion is when the warm air and the cooler air swap places. So the warmer air works like when you put a hat on in the wintertime to keep your head warm. It keeps pollution down where you and I are breathing. It does not cause pollution. It keeps pollution trapped down where you and I are. And this is simply due to the topography and geography of Pittsburgh and southwestern Pennsylvania. We have a lot of river valleys. We're kind of right on that crashing point of western winds slamming into mountains and all sorts of things. But that's what happens. And so it exacerbates what we experience here. So if we want to go into the next slide, I wanted to show you where Allegheny County monitors, these are regulatory monitors, exist. And so this is a map from the Allegheny County Health Department, who is the regulatory body for air quality in Allegheny County. And so you can see that we have 6 monitors here spread throughout Allegheny County. So this is what their dashboard looks like on their website. It's a resource to be able to see what's going on. I do have some more resources later that can show you more real-time air quality conditions, as well as ones that are well outside of Allegheny County. That way it's as most useful as possible. So going on to purple air monitors, lots of individuals and partners in southwestern PA and really across the country have installed purple air monitors. These are called low-cost air quality sensors. And what they are is, they're about the size of a softball. I see a lot of people end up zip tying them with zip ties, to their gutters, and you connect it to your Wi-Fi and it shows real-time air quality. It takes an average of air quality for particulate matter every 10 minutes. And so this is a nice tool to be able to see in near real time what air quality is doing at a hyper local level. But it also kind of works as if you want to go on to the next slide, Ben, it can work in some ways as almost an early warning system. So this is a screenshot back from the summertime when we had wildfire smoke wafting down into the States from their horrific Canadian wildfires. So you can see these monitors, you can see once smoke got down low to where these monitors are, you could see them start to light up, and you could see smoke coming your way. And so that's what we're seeing here. And you can see, and if we had subsequent screenshots of purple air maps, you could see how smoke was moving across the country. So part of what we've been doing is, I mentioned before, if you remember the municipal leader air quality primer. Part of that was part of our incentive was not only just talking resource opportunities for municipalities, but also gifting them a purple air monitor. And so this is a monitor set up by the Quaker Valley Council of Governments. This is the Ben Avon monitor that they set up from the project we were working on with them. So this way, and they actually tied their purple air monitor to their website. So you can see so residents are able to go and see what air quality is doing in their particular borough. And and again, this is a good way to engage municipalities in a forward-looking way of how we can improve air quality in our region. Ben, I can send this out to us, but we're gonna skip this slide just for the sake of time, and same with this one. But if we go here, you all will get these in. I know Ben's going to be sending out a resource, resource email for y'all. But I wanted to call attention in particular to the Air Now fire and smoke map. And when you get a chance after you get this email, that's how you can look at EPA's tracking of wildfire smoke as it moves across the country. In particular, thinking as we're getting ready for summer and wildfire, I guess, season. It seems like we're always in wildfire season, but these days. But you'll be able to track air quality due to fire and smoke. And the next to final slide, Ben, is just some ways you can get locally involved. And so, of course, I mean, GASP has been at air quality advocacy and education for 55 years. Please go to our website, sign up for our weekly alerts, check out our resources and educational materials we have on our website. And if you're not in Pennsylvania or not in Allegheny County, feel free to edit them and make them, and build on them that for your specific location, or reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk about how we can develop resources across geography, right? also airnow.gov is a great resource to be able to use for air quality in Pennsylvania and around the country. And then the final slide is just keep in touch with us. If you have any questions about anything regarding air quality, here's our emails. Here's my email. Feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to talk with you. So thank you all. And again, I'm really grateful to be here with you all today.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I appreciate it. And this is a lot of really important information that will help people be effective citizen advocates. And thank you for your work for so many years. Now I'm going to give this over to Esther for two things. First, we're going to have a call to action and some guidance on that. And then we're going to have some questions from the group at large. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms, and Esther will tell you what that's all about. So Esther, it's all yours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Patty. And thank you to all of our speakers who shared their stories and also excellent resources for the community. I want to share just another. We are in an election year, and Patrick talked about this, and all of the speakers have talked about this, the importance of engaging our elected officials. They are there to represent us, but it's also incumbent on us as the people to ensure that they are representing us. And so we created just a very small resource to share with you. I'm sorry, Ben, can I share? Am I able to share my screen? Should I be able?
You should now.
Okay, cool. Great. And can you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we put together a document that will help you first find out who your elected official is if you don't know who that person is, and then just a list of sample questions that you can ask to see where they land on some of these issues, and to find out what their environmental justice agenda is if they have one. And so I wanted to open up space for questions because I know some people only have the hour, and I did see hands raised during some of the presentation, and so I want to make space for that. But after that, we will you can take a look at this document, and we can role play or talk through, how you might go about engaging with your elected officials. So at this time, though, we're going to just open it up for questions. And Chief Mimi, I saw your hand early on. If you still have a question or comment, or if anyone has a question or comment you would like to share, please feel free to come off mute or raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you.
Okay, I'll raise my hand again. Hold on.
No need. You're off mute.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you. I was listening to, I know I came in late, but I was listening to the stories, and I have similar stories as theirs, and I shared them before. But since then, there's a lot of things that have happened that I wanted to share and hope that maybe we could work together on. I'm trying to write a letter to HUD and to Congress about what is going on in my community. And one of the things I find that is connecting between the Aborigines of America and the African American of America is that we both come from a middle, which is called the Negro. And if you just bear with me, that letter, when it talks about the Negro, this also talks about how low income communities, what at one time was called the Negro Removal Act. And it had a lot to do with where we are in housing right now. It's constitutionally wrong. And I'm writing that letter, and I didn't know if it was premature or not, but I did at some point wanted Miss Patricia to look at it and see if it was something that could be worked and signed off on for everyone, not just for Negroes, but for everyone, actually, because that act, if we could get some sort of an act going on based on the history of what is happening to our people, we may be able to get some laws enacted or something like that. And that's just where my head is with that. When I heard her story, I thought that we had a connection with that. So that's basically all I was going to say.
So if you could send me that letter, I put my email in the chat, and
Okay.
I'd be happy to look at it and get back to you. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, my email is in the chat. And
I
if
have-
anyone has a question that you don't want to raise a hand for, put it in the chat, please. Mhm. Do we have other questions at this time?
Patty, I just like to add that we have the new Clairton Inn in Clairton. They spent over $14 million to revitalize a building that we don't have any stores for the community to use. And what she mentioned, it just seems very connected to what I see taking place. A lot of the families who are living in the housing here are being pushed out from the city because the city is gentrifying. And so we see a lot of this. And one of my concerns, like we talked about with children's health, is those poor families who are being pushed out here are less likely to have the opportunity and prosperity to move once they're informed, which I
Yeah.
think they should be informed prior
Yeah.
to. Thank
Yeah.
you for allowing me to share.
Absolutely. Are there any other questions or comments you'd like to share? If not, we'll go into our breakout room so that we can help you talk through what you may say to your senators or your elected officials when you speak to them.
Okay, so Ben is going to whisk us into different spaces in the internet, and we can see each other in a few minutes.
Thanks, Patty. You all should see on your screen in just a moment an option to join. Esther, how many breakout rooms do we need? Do we need 2 or 3?
It seems like we lost some participants, so I would say probably 2 is good.
Just 2? Okay, cool. That sounds
Yeah.
good. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Something should have popped up on my screen, right, Ben, to take me into my breakout.
Let's see.
Right? Sorry.
Yeah, are you seeing
Oh,
that
there
now?
it is. Okay.
There we go.
Yep, I got it now. Thank
Thanks for your
you.
patience. Yeah. Hey, Betty, welcome. We are currently in breakout room conversations. So if you'd like to
Valerie Roberts. Oops.
No,
And
go ahead. I thought